Okay guys, one final video to help you get prepared to take and pass the Photoshop certification exam. In this one we're going to talk about groups and project management and guides. So a lot of this stuff is review because it's stuff we've talked about, but it might have been a while. But it's important to know before you take the certification exam. This first one here is a refresher on the different Creative Commons licenses that we've talked about. You can see what each of them means right over here. And the symbol that corresponds to it. And you have these different combinations of them on the left. So the one that has BY means to give attribution, aka credit. ND means no derivative works, meaning you can't really change it. SA means share alike, meaning you would have to share it, whatever you make, just like they did. And then NC means non-commercial. And over here under the licenses, you can see that they all have different combinations of those settings. So if I was trying to find one that just had attribution, it would be this first one. This fourth one down here has attribution and it's non-derivative. So that's always important to keep in mind before we take the Photoshop certification exam. And then a couple of the questions on the test deal with things related to project management. Most of the questions that you'll see are fairly common sense. It's kind of like in a perfect world, if you are a group leader, what would you have and how would you assign things to your other group members? But one of the things it may talk about on the exam is a project scope. Project scope basically is the outline to things. It's what you want to do and when you want to do it. So it's defining things like goals, deadlines, deliverables. Deliverables are basically like the file format or whatever you're actually going to turn in. And basically also the people that are going to be doing it. That's all defined under the project scope. And you would normally, when taking on a large project, figure all that out before you actually start doing the project. Now, certain things, like how much you're going to charge people, or little individual details, like, oh, I'm not sure who's going to be a model. You might not need to decide that at the beginning of the project. That you could figure out as you're doing it, as you're involved with it. Let's talk about groups real quick. So groups are a way to organize layers in Photoshop. And remember what we said. If you're having a hard time finding things, you always come up here to the Window menu. And if you're looking for something that deals with layers, we're going to go to Window and then check Layers. That will bring up my Layers panel. And if it had me organize layers into groups, I could go around on my Layers panel and hover over things until I find something that deals with groups. And groups are basically folders, which is why groups are represented in Photoshop by this little icon that looks like a folder. I can click it to add a group. Now, because I had no layer selected, nothing is in this group. If I want to rename the group, I can double click on the text and call it whatever. We're going to call this one Creative Commons. And if I want to put something in it, if I want to put a layer in it, I will drag that layer on top of the group. And I can kind of collapse the group if I don't want to see what's in it. Let's make another one. I'm going to make another group by hitting the little folder icon down here at the bottom. I'm going to double click the words to rename it. This one we'll call it Project Scope. And then I'm going to drag this first text layer in it and this second text layer in it as well. Now, obviously that has changed the way that this document looks. So if I rearrange these by dragging this down, this goes back to looking how it was. One more thing, and then we'll call it done for this video. We've talked about guides before. We used guides when we explored different filters. A couple different ways you can make guides on a document. You can drag a guide out from the ruler. If you don't see a ruler, you can either hold down Command or Control and hit R. That's a hotkey for your ruler, or go to the View menu and check Rulers. That will bring up a ruler. If you hover over your ruler and drag, you can drag out what is called a guide. You can place a guide wherever you would like. This is a vertical guide because it runs up and down. I can also drag out a guide from the top of the ruler to create a horizontal guide which runs left to right. You can drag them back if you would like to. Another option that you can do to make a ruler is go up to the View menu and just say New Guide. When you do that, what's nice about it is that you can specify exactly where you want it to be. For example, if it said put a horizontal guide at 200 pixels, I could check horizontal and then type out 200 px and click OK, and then we'll put a horizontal guide at exactly 200 pixels. So that's it. Really, if you guys have done geometrics and you've done all of our editing assignments, and you've been playing around with Photoshop for this whole school year, you are ready to take and pass this Photoshop certification exam. If you don't pass it, that's okay. You can take it multiple times. I don't want you guys to stress about it. You will come across questions that include words that you don't know, and that's okay. You just got to not be stressed, take your time, and look. Remember, the Photoshop test isn't about necessarily you knowing every single little thing, but it's about your ability to stay cool under pressure and look around until you find different things in Photoshop. That's it. I'm excited to see how well you guys do on this exam.